لا تقل لوحدي أو كيف السبيل.
Humanity sets the agenda.
The time is just gone 9:42 a.m. as we continue with the show this morning. Now, the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, is facing somewhat of a backlash, and this is after his recent visit to Ukraine. And we've seen the flack that he's received, and also ridicule on social media from some political analysts and commentators for traveling to Ukraine, and also at the same time certain allegations with regard to wasting of money. And joining us this morning to put this debate or this criticism of John Steenhuisen into context, we joined by political analyst Professor Dirk Kotzé. Professor Kotzé, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Yes, what do you make of this criticism and the flack that the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, is receiving for visiting Ukraine?
Well, I think it's part of South African politics is that it's most of the time contested. There are persons who are in favor of it and persons who are very critical of it. It's to a large extent a reflection of where their own political positions are, where they come from in terms of where they personally stand in this particular situation, whether they are pro-Russian or pro-Ukraine, or simply nowhere in terms of taking up a position. But most people have either or position in this. I think why there is criticism is that there's, I guess, a feeling that he will present it when he comes back as if he had, is by implication criticizing the ANC government for the position they take up, which is obviously what the opposition party is supposed to do. They are not supposed to go along with the government in all respects. And then also present an alternative case or interpretation for this, what is happening in Europe and in specific, more generally, and then specifically in the Ukraine. So I think this is part of the political debate. International relations is exceptionally important for South Africa and very relevant. Just go to the petrol station, and when you fill up your petrol tank, you will see what is the significance of it.
Exactly. And also, we know politicians will make political capital. They'll take political mileage out of anything any politician will do, whether it's in government or in the opposition. And as you mentioned, international relations, because what is happening with Russia and Ukraine is impacting on not only the petrol price, but in more ways than one, it's impacting on the rest of the world. And the key issue here is talking about money, spending money, investing time, money, and effort on an issue which does not involve the Southern African region. And I just like your thoughts, on that level of criticism or that type of comment where it says not involving the Southern African region.
Well, it is, as far as I understand, it's not public money that is using for this. It's not paid by us as the taxpayers. It's done in the name of the Democratic Alliance, and what they do is obviously their responsibility. How they promote their party interests is for them to decide. And all political parties do have to pay attention to international relations, whether it is about the Middle Eastern situation, whether it is about now the situation in Ukraine, whether it is about China. All parties must be informed about it, and they must have opinions, because ultimately international relations, whether it is South Africa's international relations or Zimbabwe's international relations or Namibia's international relations, its purpose for all of them is to promote their national interests. That is what we in political science teach our students. It's about promoting the national interest of that particular country. So ultimately what comes back, whether it is from the government or the opposition, in terms of the domestic debate that must evolve out of this, ultimately it will have to be in the interest of South Africa in general. One cannot necessarily demonstrate it directly, but South Africa is not an island. South Africa is part of a much bigger, first of all, Southern Africa, then the rest of the world. And we have to play our role. We are part of the G20, for example. We have now been 3 times a member of the United Nations Security Council, and in some case, some months actually chaired as president the Security Council. We are involved in other UN aspects. We are involved in the peacekeeping forces in the DRC and other countries. So South Africa does not have only an inward-looking approach. It's not only about what is there for the direct interest of South Africans and people living in South Africa, because we are linked, and that's where the notion of globalization or interdependency or so comes from, is that we are linked. We, for example, don't produce rice. We don't produce really tea. So we depend on other countries in order to provide it for us. That depends on international trade relations. And these are all aspects that the government are responsible for. And when we are talking about cooking oil, we don't produce enough sunflower at this stage in order to produce cooking oil only for ourselves. So we depend on Russia and the Ukraine for that cooking oil, which is a very basic. Wheat for bread and other products in future, we will possibly see the impact of that. So it is something that affects all of us, whether we are rich or poor, whether we are living in towns or in the rural areas. And that is the interrelationship that exists that we must take note of. Otherwise, we are going to live in a sort of isolated island, and we will always be surprised by events from outside that we are not prepared for.
Yes, and Prof, I'm certain you know this better than I do. When it comes to politicians, they love point scoring, and they will use any excuse to their advantage or any situation that may arise to their advantage. But the key issue is sometimes we find that politicians are very, very selective. In the case of Ukraine, we know the entire world is focused on Ukraine, but we've had lots of problems all across the entire world. And about a month ago, I spoke to an academic at the University of Johannesburg talking about what's been taking place in Ethiopia as well. So that's the other thing as well that politicians need to consider is they cannot be selective where it could possibly suit a certain agenda or suit their position or what they obviously would subscribe to or what they believe in. And I think this is absolutely important. And perhaps that could be one of the reasons why we see this type of criticism as well.
Yes, that is indeed so. We can expect of political parties to pay attention to as many situations as possible, but again, it comes back to our national interest. Some of it is for humanitarian purposes when there is a huge catastrophe, a natural or otherwise type of catastrophe, and then countries do provide support, even if it's not necessarily a country with which they have very close relations. Otherwise, countries do define what are their interests in terms of international relations also. Some political parties have interest and will want to develop relations with particular countries which are different from that of the government. And that's very natural. That's how it plays out all over the world. And that is what politics and international relations are. Not all countries are treated as equal and are not part of sort of intimate relationships. Some are just cordial relations and others not. So there is not an absolute rule that all countries must attend to all issues. They have their own priorities. Some countries, for example, South Africa, pay more attention to matters with respect to the prevention of nuclear power because of our own experience and the role that we can play. But we are, for example, not involved in other matters where South Africa is not so prominent and cannot make such a contribution. So when it comes to international relations, foreign policy, countries make choices of who they want to be close to and who they want to support and with whom they want to be involved and with which countries it will be less. That's, again, very typical part of foreign policy making.
Well, Prof, thank you very much for that, for unpacking what we have this morning. We do appreciate you taking time out and talking to us this morning. We wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Professor Dirk Kotzé, political analyst, joining us this morning against the background of DA leader John Steenhuisen, who's come under fire for going to the Ukraine. We're going to go for a break and we come back. We're going to take a look at kidnappings. Yesterday we spoke about the Free State, but the Eastern Cape is no different. So let's focus when we get back on kidnappings and particularly of foreign nationals in the Eastern Cape.